everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the PHNX Coyotes Podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah here with Craig and Petey. It feels like it's been a while since we've been all together in this studio, but I'm happy to be sitting in these chairs.
And also, one thing about playoffs, and you said Happy Monday, and I go, oh, it's Monday. Like, you forget what day it is when the hockey playoffs are on, because it's just
not so
game
happy
day
in
or
Boston
not game day or game day game. So it's Monday. I was not aware it was Monday.
What a weekend of playoffs. Holy moly. I tweeted this, like, we are not worthy. And as three people who have no real vested interest in what happens, the Coyotes are out of the playoffs. We only care about next Monday and the following Tuesday. That's our playoffs. It's fun to see chaos. Our brackets are destroyed.
Busted.
We will get to that tomorrow. But wow, what a weekend.
Yeah. We got to start with Boston and Florida.
Let's talk about Boston.
There. Listen, things always come out after a series is over. We learned that Patrice Bergeron was playing with a herniated disc. Surprise. He plays with an injury in every playoffs. It's crazy. But to me, this is a shame. You guys know how I feel about Patrice Bergeron. I think he's been one of the best players in the league for more than a decade. Comported himself with such class. Great leader. I really thought this was his best chance to get that second one and really cement his legacy. If you watched the end of that game, the way he was
hugging everyone,
it sure felt like the end, saluting the fans. It sure felt like the end for Patrice Bergeron, who will be 38 this summer, is dealing with a back injury now. Man, this is a tough one to watch for Boston. 135 points, the most in NHL history, and they get bounced in the first round by a wild card.
But this is who, let's go back to game one. This is who I thought Boston would be this season. They'd be a team that, we said it in a preview show, that we're going to be a team that's on their way down. The window is closing. They've got some veteran guys. Bergeron going to play, not play. This is where they're going to be, right? We talked about Swayman and Ullmark as being a goaltending tandem. Who's going to take the lead? And then this season happened. And they were unbelievable. Like, watching them play during the regular season was like no other team, clearly, in the history of the league.
Team.
Best ever.
Regular season.
And then you go, is there a point? Like, it doesn't matter. HK. Like, there is one thing about the NHL. You win the Stanley Cup. That's it. There's no trophy. Well, actually, there is a trophy. It's President's Trophy. But
it's cursed.
It doesn't matter. So all of the things that they accomplished over 1 through 82 doesn't matter anymore. When you wake up Monday morning, it doesn't matter.
And it's crazy how much the narrative turns on one play, right? They had a lead with 1:01 to go in that game. Yep. Jeremy Swayman gives up, in my opinion, his second bad goal of the game. They go to overtime and they lose. If they hold on for that last minute,
it's over.
We've seen crazy stuff in the first round. It's not a big deal that a team went 7 games if they win. It happens all the time.
Yes.
And they're moving on, and maybe they pick up some steam. Yes. So it's that close to feeling
such a
different
line.
Way. Yes.
It's such a fine line. And we could talk about some of their decisions, and we'll talk about their goaltending for sure. But Florida's ability to not give up and continue to play, you have to really look at what their leadership group did to Tkachuk. What he did, and Verhaeghe, and what these guys did to stay in a game when they could easily have gone, we're out of this. This is Boston. Like, let's just quit. Yeah. And they just didn't. And the matchup, this is another argument that they go to the 1-8. Oh wait, this was 1-8. Yep. So it doesn't matter.
Huh. Wow.
You got something?
Well, there was a 43-point gap between Florida and Boston.
Yeah. It's not the largest.
It's not, but that's insane. It's insane. And we sat here on the Eastern playoff preview show looking at the stats of lower seeds in the first round, and it was around 40%, I believe, like of bottom teams that won. But if you looked at the bottom teams across this playoffs, like none of it. And I even remember sitting here and thinking, I want to pick Florida just to be crazy, but I couldn't, because how could I possibly pick against Boston? But you look at the history of teams that do this, and we actually have a chart of teams that have historically had the most points and the most wins in a season. So best NHL regular season records ever. Obviously, Boston, number 1, 65, 12-5, lost in the first round. Detroit, 1996. Is the second place, lost in the conference final. Tampa, 2019, we all remember them getting swept by Columbus in the first round after winning 62 games. And then you go to that, the Canadians in the 70s, they won the Stanley Cup. But then, I mean, these top 13, the most recent team to win the cup after having a great season was Colorado last season with 56-19-7. They won the Stanley Cup. But you look at this, it's not you winning the regular season or having the best season ever is not a guarantee. It's about 50-50 here of who won the final and who didn't. I just thought it was some interesting
but what is it?
Stats.
Is it psychologically, it's a let up? It's they were chasing the record, so they played better to chase the record. Would they have been better off not getting the record and just playing regular hockey?
I really wonder about that. Yeah. You're
it was
so focused on...
Yeah.
And it may not have just been, we're exhausted. There might have been some fatigue. There's always fatigue at the end of an NHL season. But mentally, we got it. Just relax a little bit. And then you got to dial it back up to that level again immediately. And maybe they weren't able to do that. There's going to be all sorts of speculation about what happened to the Bruins in this series. I want to point out one thing, though. This idea that, oh my God, they lost to a wild card team that had to struggle and get in. I want people to remember something about the Florida Panthers. They won the President's Trophy last season. This is a very good team. They had some changes on this roster. They had to incorporate and they had to figure it out. By the end of the season, that team was playing really good hockey. And to focus on one player in particular, Matthew Tkachuk has become a beast in this game. I think he is a top 10 player in the NHL right now, and he had an MVP caliber season. He was a force in this series.
Yeah, so there's two things. One, what is he going to be able to do against Toronto? And this is a different series now. It's Boston is balanced. They're very deep up front. Their defense are incredibly active, and they had the Vezina winning goalie on the back end. Those are things Toronto doesn't have. That's not Toronto's mix of a team. So we're going to get into our predictions tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what kind of a factor Tkachuk can have in this series.
You like the matchup, though, right?
For Toronto, I do.
Yeah.
I do. But we'll talk about that tomorrow, the matchup. But I bet can Tkachuk play the same role he did in the Boston series and the Toronto series? And I think he can. Toronto's defense is different. And I think their makeup of the defense is a little different. And the last thing I do want to say, and I know everybody's going to address it, is what were they doing with their goaltending?
Yeah, we need.
If you're going to go to Swayman, do it game 3. Do it game 4.
Even do it game 6 when there's less pressure. Then
game 7?
You gotta win this at home.
Game 7. And if you think he was the sharpest goalie of the Boston Bruins that game, he made some unbelievable saves. Makes the breakaway in overtime.
You gotta make those saves, overtime, right? You have to make those big saves.
There's 2 squeakers.
I agree. Including the one that tied the game.
Whose decision is that to go to Swayman on game 7?
I think it's
nuts. When's the last time he played?
I think it's nuts.
That was wild.
Listen, there's speculation that Linus Ullmark was injured. I haven't seen anything yet, and we've heard other Bruins injuries, so I'm wondering about that. Was he gassed? I'm sorry. You go with the guy that got you there, the guy that's going to win the Vezina Trophy.
That's poor management.
Plays in game 7. That was a terrible decision.
I couldn't believe it.
If you want to make the change to Swayman, do it earlier.
Yeah.
Do it game 3 or 4 or 5. Just do it earlier. Give him an opportunity to play, because then guess what? You can't go back to Ullmark in game 8, can you? Because you're golfing. So go to Swayman so you have the opportunity to go back to Ullmark again. You don't pull that card on game 7. I would really have liked to have been a fly on wall in that room with a meeting with Montgomery, the goalie coach, on that decision, because I don't understand it. When I saw he was playing, the only thing I could say is if there is fatigue, he was hurt, he wasn't 100%, he was sick. Okay, then you have no choice. You go with the guy that Swayman, you're confident as a backup, but you don't pull that card as, hey, he's pulling out game 7 for us. Come on. It's not fair for Swayman. Clearly not fair for your teammates, because after that first one goes in, did you see the team?
Yeah. It was a bad goal. It was a bad goal.
The bad goal, man.
And like I said, the game time goal was a bad goal too. Yeah,
I'm
literally baffled by that decision.
I gasped in the final minute. I saw there was a minute 35 left. I hadn't been watching. I was like tuning in and out, and I turned it on. I was like, "Oh, let's just watch the final minute play out." I screamed, I yelled.
So
it was insane.
Put out your tinfoil hat that this was the plan of the league, because if anybody has the ability to go back to the TNT broadcast before the puck is dropped, 10 seconds before the goal goes in, off of their bug, where the scoreboard is, it says Florida goal.
I saw that.
It came off of, right when they dropped the puck, it said Florida goal. And I go, what?
Yes.
And the play went on, and I go, oh, they just made a graphic mistake, and then they scored. And I said, I wonder if Bettman made the call.
That was bizarre.
And say, Florida, we're giving Florida a goal here. And then they scored. So I went back and I watched it again because I want to make sure that's what I saw.
I noticed that too.
That was bizarre.
That was weird.
Tinfoil hat. It's all staged, just like WWE.
Just like the Coyotes will win the draft
Derek.
lottery next week. Couple things. One, we got to shout out Brandon Montour for a monster game and also a monster season. As three people who live and work in a market that doesn't get a lot of national recognition. Florida's similar. Got to give Montour his
He's been
flowers.
unreal. He's been a difference of this team for the entire season, and he's one player that jumps out at you from the back end. You look at his numbers as a defenseman, you're like, I when you just see his numbers, he's got to be a winger with the numbers he's putting up.
Yeah.
No, he's on the back end. Elite speed, reads the play incredibly well, and he's going to be one to watch in this series.
And a lot of people wondered, okay, how will they, losing Huberdeau was one thing. They're getting Matthew Tkachuk, but losing Mackenzie Weegar, how will their back end absorb that? Well,
and that was the answer.
Yeah.
So before this playoff started, Craig asserted that he does not believe in the President's Trophy curse. However, I would like to bring up this argument because the Boston Bruins are now the 7th President's Trophy winning team to lose in the first round of the playoffs since 2000. And the last team to win the Stanley Cup and the President's Trophy was the Chicago Blackhawks in 2012, 2013, 10 years ago. Everybody else,
best Blackhawk team of that entire
everybody
run.
else has lost. Everybody else. Is the President's Trophy curse real?
But what you have to look at is what is the winning percentage by seeds. So if you just focus on, they didn't win, they won the President's Trophy, you can reach that conclusion. But if you start looking how each seed does, you see diminishing percentages.
Yeah, the top teams win.
Yeah, the top teams still win.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think, though,
it's pressure, though.
This one is different, though.
Yeah, I agree with this one.
Because of the gap.
So here's my question. Is this the biggest collapse in NHL? In modern, let's say modern, because...
I was asked this yesterday, and the answer immediately would have been yes, just because it's so fresh. When we sit back and look over history, it's going to be no. I don't think it will be because it was 7 games and it was overtime. I think even you go to the Tampa Bay getting swept in 4 by Columbus, and those kind of collapses
that comes to my mind.
Are going to be different because that was a team that was poised to win the Cup the following year, so you knew they were close to ready. This one is just so surprising because they set the record.
It's Columbus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what other playoff series wins do you have?
they set the record to a team that was the President's Trophy winning team a year ago.
Columbus doesn't win playoff series ever.
So it's a little different to me, and I think if I'm a Bruins fan, I don't know what the hell I'm doing today.
I'm
I'm
staying home. I know that.
I'm sick.
My bracket had them winning the Stanley Cup.
Sick.
Mine too.
You probably are sick if you're a Bruins fan today. Whether
had them win the Stanley
Cup. Too
Cup.
much drinking or just nauseous.
Sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me feel like it's obviously all about the playoffs. I would be apprehensive. Like, let's just say, let's have a Wheel of Fantasy moment. In 10 years, the Coyotes win the President's Trophy. They have a record-setting season. It would be so fun for us. For us three, our post-game shows would be electric. But I would have some apprehension. And I even want to mention the Phoenix Suns. Last season, they set a franchise record. They won 64 games. They were 64-18. They lost in the second round and had just a disappointing end to a historic regular season. I don't care. You need to make the playoffs. It helps to have home ice court, whatever advantage it helps. Not this postseason. The road teams are freaking dominating, but generally, so I don't know. I'd rather, and it's funny because I thought Boston would break the mold. We looked at Tampa. You can argue they didn't have the experience, and then we saw what they bounced back from that and what they accomplished. But Boston, we said they have the veteran leadership. They've this core has won a Stanley Cup before. I didn't see it going this way because. But there's other teams that I thought, they couldn't live up to the pressure, but not Boston. So it's just...
They had everything.
But you know what they didn't have?
I was shocked.
They didn't play meaningful games the last 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Florida did.
Florida did.
Yeah.
Florida had to scratch and claw to get in. You're playing meaningful games. You look at the teams that were better down the stretch, but guess what? Boston was 9-1 to close it out.
We'll get to that in a minute because Colorado Avalanche was hot down the stretch.
Yeah, it's too bad.
And
I would like to see it. This is where coaching becomes so important to me. And coaching in the playoffs is what makes and separates the good coaches from the bad coaches. Games 1 through 82, there's so many factors, backup goalies, guys are hurt, travel schedule. It's playing the same team 7 times and finding a way to win. And what is it that we can do better against this team to beat that team. And that's where coaching, sometimes you're just outmanned and you can't win. The team's just better. That happens. This one, to me, Boston on paper, if you don't think they're as good as Florida, well, you're just wrong because they're deep. I know Bergeron's hurt, but Pavelski's hurt. They win. You got to find a way. And I'm wondering what was said in that coaching room. I put so much pressure on the coaching room here. One, what were they saying leading up to games 1 and 2 to get this team over the hump and get them started? Could they have been harder looking back? Do you need to drive this team harder? Do you need to motivate them differently? Because I don't think they had an answer for Florida. I just don't. It wasn't like Bobrovsky is good.
Specifically, I'm curious about that tactically because you hear about this all the time in the playoffs, how some coaches are great in the regular season, but when it comes down to that head-to-head matchup, tactically, like Joel Quenneville was considered a great bench coach, while Bruce Boudreau was not. What did you see in this series?
And I'm not calling guys out. We'll talk Boudreau. Because you know what Boudreau's answer would be? And watch the bench interviews now. Play harder. The guys need to have more effort. They need to play harder. No. Well, we need to chip it through the neutral zone because that 1-2-2, we can't beat it. We got to chip it up same side, get it in deep, and go attack it. Otherwise, we got to hinge it and go out the weak side. We're having a problem through the neutral zone. You need to have answers. Even if those answers aren't right, you need to have answers so that your team can believe in them and your team can have that in their head as they're playing. Because what happened, you saw in the Rangers series, Rangers couldn't get through the neutral zone for 2 games against the Devils.
Yeah.
So all in my mind, if I'm coaching that team, is we got to get through the neutral zone. That's our focus in practice. It's our focus in the game. And here's how technically we are going to do that. And if you can't do that, players start looking at each other. If the coach just says, you got to play harder, you got to play harder. We're playing hard. It's the playoffs.
Right.
Give us something tactically that we can grab onto. Hey, we're not getting the puck to the middle of the ice. So what we're going to do, we're going to hard rim in the offensive zone to the weak side D, and we're going to deliver pucks to the net. Okay. That beats a collapsing defensive system that's really tight. Give me something. And even if it doesn't work, we've tried it. And you know what's in our player's head now when we go to the offensive zone? I'm going to get to the weak side and I'm driving the net. I'm going to get to the weak side and I'm driving the net. It gives them something to think about versus just play harder. Play harder means you're chasing the puck. When you chase the puck, you make mistakes and you leave up openings in behind you. That's what concerned me about Boston. I never saw them tactically dominate this Florida team. They were even games. It was a back and forth even game. They weren't able to capitalize on opportunities, and they never felt like they were in control. If you get beat by a goalie, you get beat by a goalie.
Yeah,
I didn't feel that in the series.
That didn't happen in this series.
Okay, sorry.
Well,
no, it's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And RIP to my futures bets. 2 of them died on the same day. I had $5 on Boston. I had $5 on Colorado. RIP. Yeah. But luckily, there's lots of promotions always on BetMGM, which is great for me because I need to redeem myself.
I know. I better get back at it. Because you know the answer. When you lose those bets, you got to bet more.
Oh, of course. Well,
Can't get it back unless you bet more.
I have to pick my new winners. So I might put some futures bets down. And that's why I use BetMGM. They have a lot of great stuff on there, especially with round 2 starting tomorrow. Make sure you get your bets in. Make sure you get your bets in for tonight's Rangers-Devils game. We have been blessed by multiple game 7s in the first round. It's been electric. And we love BetMGM. We have another PHNX Suns away playoff watch party tonight, presented by Neutral. There's happy hour pricing, $6 Rally the Valley margaritas. The food is amazing, and we're excited to kick off the Knockout Nights Cornhole League at BetMGM the first Friday of every month. It's going to be a blast. So check out BetMGM in person, check out the app, and if you haven't signed up yet, use the bonus code PHNX, and there's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for the Arizona audience, you'll get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use bonus code PHNX. Check out the show notes for full details. And now it's time to listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
And listen, I know BetMGM, it's in Glendale, so stop at a Circle K, fill up your gas.
Yep. There's 40 inside. Along the way.
Yeah, there's 1,000.
They're there.
Stock up on gas. Go grab yourself some chips. You know what I've really been craving is the salt and pepper kettle cooked chips. We don't have them on our in-office snack cart.
You know what I've been craving?
What?
A sleeve of donuts, as Sean DeBoss put it. Sleeve of donuts. I need a sleeve of mini donuts.
Oh, man. Well, we love our friends at Circle K. So make sure you go and check out all this great stuff and make sure you're not missing out. Head to circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle Ks near you. I promise you, there are a lot of them near you. You might just not know it. All right. Well, moving on to the second upset of Sunday. The Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champions, are not only out, but they are eliminated by second year in existence Seattle Kraken, who now hold the record as the second team in history to score the first goal of 7 games in a playoff series. They've been around for 2 years, and they now hold this record. And they are now the second expansion team in the last 10 years to win their first playoff series.
This is how you do expansion, folks. I know a lot of people were pissed off that Vegas had instant success. Guess what? When you invest $1 billion to start up a team, the league should probably find a way to let you have some success. There's nothing wrong with that. It ignites a market. We saw what it did in Vegas. You cement your place in the market if you have success instead of waiting, however many years like the Caps or Islanders or a number of other teams that came into the league. This is the way you do success. This is a really cool story. I am loving this. On the flip side, I don't see this as the same sort of magnitude of upset. I know the Avs are defending Cup champs, but they were so depleted.
Decimated.
They were, it was just ridiculous. They had so little depth left in this lineup. This didn't surprise me.
No.
Yeah, when I looked at the Colorado Avalanche team, there was a concern level this entire season because everybody kept saying, we listened to the Dion VR show, well, they're going to get healthy and they're going to get better. They're going to get healthy and they're going to get better.
We thought Landeskog was coming back.
Yeah. Landeskog's going to play in the playoffs all season. Landeskog's going to come back. McCarr's been in and out of the lineup, but wait for the playoffs. It doesn't work like that. Kucherov was able to flip the switch one time on a team that he just plugged and played into.
Flip the switch.
Yeah.
Just like Patrick Kane.
Tinfoil hats are back on.
But this team wasn't that.
No.
This team became a one-trick pony. And the one trick was Nathan MacKinnon. And you look past Mikko Rantanen. For sure, we know how great of a player Mikko Rantanen is, but this was Nathan MacKinnon. Yep. Like, he was absolutely elite. But guess what? They didn't have the pieces 4 through 12 up front that they had a year ago that helped them get through. And the back end wasn't as dominating offensively as they needed them to be. And that includes Byram and Gerard and McCarr and Taves. They weren't what they were supposed to be. And I don't know if it was their expectations that we are the Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champions, and it's eventually going to happen. Seattle was good the first few games, but we're Colorado. We're going to win because we're Colorado. Similar to Boston, but they didn't have the weapons that Boston did. They weren't as deep as Boston. Colorado, I tell you what, Seattle was deeper, faster. They were on pucks quicker than Colorado. They were the better team. Now we're, bounces and ref calls. It happened in every series.
Yeah, I know. I get so tired of hearing that. Right? Oh, the ref's job does. Yeah, like said, every losing team ever. Whatever. And there have been some instances in this postseason in particular where there have been some bad calls, but you can't focus on those. You got to rise above those. Good teams rise above those.
Yeah, because you look at Seattle. Their best player, Jared McCann, led the team in scoring out of the playoffs.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. I won't say out of the playoffs. That's not fair. But he's out of that series, so they just had somebody else do it. You don't know who it is.
Bjorkstrand.
Yeah. You don't know who because you go who? Who are these guys? I don't even know who they are. But I tell you what, we saw it in game 1. They smothered the Avalanche. There was no room to move. They forechecked hard. They created turnovers. They went to the net. They created turnovers. They threw it back to the point and threw it at the net. It was just easy, simple hockey over and in. Get it in the defensive zone, off the glass and out. There was nothing fancy about the way Seattle played, but they played hard and there was no response. Curious to see what I think about the series tomorrow.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that. I don't think it's going to happen, but can you imagine a Western Conference final with the Vegas Golden Knights and Seattle Kraken?
That would be actually an amazing story. I would hate it because I hate Vegas and I don't want to see them succeed, but alas. And Karen makes a good point in the chat. Not just her, but probably tired too. I mean, yeah, Seattle, they've only been around for a year. They didn't make the playoffs last year. Colorado went as far as you could last season, so you have to imagine. With
that team, though, it's a team. And I think it really showed. We talked about Colorado. You look at Mikko Rantanen had 7 goals, McKinnon 3, Lehkonen 3. Go to Seattle, nobody had more than 2. And it spread throughout the entire roster.
Yeah.
And it really was who's up next, who's next, who's going to be the guy tonight. It was a complete team effort. When you're playing against a complete team that's believing in themselves as a team, they are incredibly dangerous. And Grubauer playing in front of the ball faithful.
Game.
The revenge game.
100% the revenge game.
For sure. And that, he was good. And that made the difference for that team. It wasn't Colorado's goaltending that was the problem, is they weren't deep enough. They didn't have the secondary scoring, and they were hurt, and they never got healthy. Now, could they come back with Landeskog a year from now, and McCarr gets over his head issues and upper body issues 100%. That he had this season?
If they came back next season and made a run to the Stanley Cup final, I would believe that. 100%.
If they were a healthy team, games 1 through 82, this is still the best team in the Western Conference. But they didn't win.
But and you talk about injuries, too. Like you mentioned Jared McCann, Andre Burakovsky, too, who the Avalanche sorely missed. He's missed a ton of time. So Seattle overcame injuries.
Yep, and so did Dallas. I talked about Pavelski.
So
they're still out. Everybody's got injuries.
I don't want to diminish what happened here.
No.
You can still overcome that.
Seattle played great.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
They smothered a fast team, and the only guy they couldn't contain consistently was McKinnon. And I know we talked about Rannon's points.
Yeah, take a number.
But McKinnon drove the bus.
Yeah.
Period. And sometimes I wondered if he tried to do it a little too much. I wonder if he held on to the puck a little too long. I wonder if his frustrations consumed him and he felt he had to do it all by himself.
And he's a hard-driving leader, too, by all accounts in the room. So, yeah.
Yeah, you could see that last night.
So I wonder if that had something to do with it, that he tried to do it all himself. And sometimes that's just too much. You can't.
Nope.
You need to give it to your teammates. You need to have it. And that's why Seattle got through this, because they did it as a team.
Anywho, Michael in the chat said both of last year's Stanley Cup final teams are out first round 2. That is true. As we didn't even mention
Tampa.
Toronto and Tampa. Hello.
Good Lord, we haven't got to Toronto yet.
The Leafs did it. And by the way, I forgot I was going to show, this was the best meme I saw on the internet all weekend. The passing of the baton, choking in the first round. Toronto got the monkey off their back. They passed it to Boston, and boy howdy, Toronto is moving on. Tampa out, Colorado out, and now we get some parity. And Buccigross tweeted this list of teams that are remaining. This is amazing. So the last Stanley Cups among the remaining playoff teams: Toronto in 67, Edmonton 1990, Rangers 94, Devils 99, Dallas 99, Devils 03, Carolina 06, Seattle and Vegas none. So somebody's going to win the Stanley Cup for the first time in almost 20 years.
That's crazy.
At the very least. This is what I love about the NHL.
Jersey. Ray Whitney was on that Carolina team. The most recent
This is
winner.
what I love about the NHL. You look at the last decade or so. Chicago won multiple times. LA, Pittsburgh. There were a lot of repeats. We've gotten really lucky since 2018 that we haven't had any repeats. It's all been there's been a lot of parity, which I've loved. I really want a Toronto Edmonton Stanley Cup final. I think it would be hilarious. But anywho, I'm very proud of Toronto for finally doing it. My Canadian friends and family were blowing up my phone. My friend was texting me that, and she lives in North Toronto. She could hear honking. The TTC was
Sean was excited too.
Was completely blocked. The buses were blocked. Anyway, it seemed like they won the Stanley Cup.
You can jump on anytime you want.
Here's the concern, Leah. And
I
I agree.
Nothing nice to say. I'm not trying to ruin Leah's vibe.
Just remember,
Toronto,
I brought you fuzzy peaches.
Yeah,
we did say Toronto was. I thought this was the year Toronto got over Tampa for all the reasons you mentioned, them being tired. We thought this was finally the year, and then they looked like they were going to collapse again. So we weren't too surprised. But you saw on Twitter and Instagram all of the people reacting. There's people sobbing in tears, families rejoicing, cities rejoicing. Like, this is a big freaking deal.
It was the first round.
First round.
So
now,
like imagine if like Boston had mowed through Florida like we all thought, and okay, Toronto, go ahead.
So now here's the problem. Now is it one of two things? Now is it a sense of relief that that pressure is off our backs, and now we can just go play, and we are the better team, we are better than Florida, and we're going to be okay? Or is it they already had their party?
Yeah.
Now there's a letdown that we built up so much tension over this. We've carried this on our backs for so long.
Kyle Dubas in the
We'll fill in that narrative later.
And now they fall that.
Hindsight.
So it is going to be interesting to see how this team responds, because I still believe Toronto is the better team. But now, can they continue? By the way, speaking of an Edmonton-Toronto final, like TNT and ESPN are just praying for that, aren't they?
Yes, Canada. Finally, we would finally have a Canadian champion.
Yeah.
It's been
and
30
everybody
years.
will be watching baseball.
30
Here.
years.
Come
Should I say that again? 30 years.
How
since a Canadian
beautiful
team
would
won
it
a
be
cup.
if the 2-year-old Seattle franchise, the Seattle franchise that is just right under the noses of Vancouver and
Oh my
Western
God.
Canada,
I love
over
that
the border.
wins
perspective.
ring this year.
Seattle, Vegas. Let's get it out in the
Fantastic.
universe.
I am just like we talked about parity already, but a lot of these series have held serve, and no matter what happens in Rangers Devils, you're not going to say, "Oh, that's a massive upset," because
No.
it's 2-3. But most of the playoffs have held serve. But losing the defending Cup champ and losing the team with the most points in NHL history is like, I don't know. It's like a movie where early on the two lead actors in the movie die. You're like, oh, everybody else is still there, but wait, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy
Yeah,
to have both of those.
Does that
teams
change
out.
the interest in this playoff race for hockey fans?
Not for me. I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else. I'm still all in. I'm loving this.
Or
but
does it make it more of a free for all and there's more interest now because the two behemoths are out?
it does
I almost feel
open.
like it would be more interest because if I think about like I'm a passive basketball fan in the NBA. If all like I was cheering for the Sacramento Kings because I liked the underdog.
Yeah.
Golden State, they won a bajillion times, like HK. So
Yeah,
I think there is interest, especially with Seattle. Like if you're a hockey fan and you're kind of looking for a team to call your own,
Yeah.
why not cheer for the Seattle Kraken? If you don't have an affiliation, if you don't live in a city with an NHL market,
Yeah.
I would be all over the Seattle.
I think that is going to
bandwagon.
be the bandwagon team. I think that's the Cinderella team because they
How do
knocked
you
out
not
Colorado.
love that?
Yeah.
I think
how
it's
do you
going
not
to
love
be them.
And then people start to hate them if they actually have some success.
I very desperately need them to be the Dallas
Because
Stars.
do you remember how much people loved Vegas's run to the Cup
Oh,
final
my
the first year,
goodness.
and now
now
Hates
everyone
them. Now
hates
they're the most
them.
hated team in the league.
Yeah.
Jack Eichel.
Anyway,
what was that for? Why did you have to say his name?
just threw it out there under her breath. Jack Eichel.
That was so
I want to see him fail. That was a supportive thing.
Okay, fair. I can
But I'm excited to see where this goes now. This
Me too.
playoff season, I've said it over and over and over again. I love March Madness. I think that first weekend of March Madness is unbelievable sports drama. First round of the NHL playoffs is just different.
Yep.
It's different. There's games everywhere.
it's
You
a
never
drug.
know who the star is going to be. Who's going to
So
be that
good.
guy?
Mhm.
Rupe Hintz. Well, he's become the guy. Kachuk's been the guy. Like Lyon was the guy for a couple games, and now it's not.
By the
So-
way, did you say you hear Biz saying that Matthew Tkachuk's the best American player in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Well, I was like, wow. I mean,
Austin Matthews about
Austin
to take
Matthews
that personally.
might disagree, but like other than that,
yeah, We'll
he's
see.
right there now. He has just elevated
see.
himself so much in my eyes. What a player he has
Well-
become. And I'm going to say this, looking right into the camera. I think it's safe to say at this point that Matthew Tkachuk is the best Tkachuk in the history of the NHL.
Wow. Mike
What's up,
drop.
Walt?
We will be cutting that.
He
and
won't mind that
sending
one
it.
at all.
We'll text it to him.
Yep.
Wow. Mike dropped that.
Well, I'm excited for tomorrow. We're going to preview the second round, go over our picks. Might not be good for me in the East. We'll see what happens tonight. But we will continue to cover the NHL playoffs here on PHNX Coyotes. And obviously, it's May 1st. There's a couple major things happening this month. We got the lottery a week from today. We have the vote 2 weeks from tomorrow. So just a lot going on. But we hope you support us by becoming a diehard at gophnx.com. Become a diehard. Grab a shirt from the locker. Petey's rocking the Four Peaks tee. I'm wearing the Devin Booker shirt. You got the letters. We got to support the
Wow.
Phoenix Suns today, game 2 of the playoffs. And always, there's a lot of great stuff going on at PHNX. And if you're a diehard, you get 20% off merchandise and events, including we got our Keeping It 100 golf tournament coming up, presented by Pins and Aces and Big Drive Energy. That's on May 26th. And like I mentioned earlier, our Knockout Nights cornhole tournament at the BetMGM Sportsbook. So just a ton of great stuff coming up. Become a diehard. Check out PHNX Locker. Grab your membership to receive exclusive content discounts on all events and merch, and access to our Discord chats, which there was a lot of great conversation over the weekend because I appreciate the Coyotes Discord because they're not just Coyotes fans, it's a lot of hockey fans.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of chatter recently, which I appreciate. And after we finish up our show today, I'm really excited because you're finally here for food, PD.
Spaghetti Shack, baby.
Spaghetti Shack.
Okay, great.
PD doesn't eat except for at
my
home.
stomach is growling right now, so I was literally thinking of let's get the show over so I can eat, and now I got Spaghetti Shack.
I love Spaghetti Shack. I cannot wait. I always look forward to us having them for the lunch, and it's just great food. And Spaghetti Shack, it's community focused. It's a to-go pasta concept, and it was started right here in Arizona, in Tempe, by 5 lifelong friends. So I just love that, supporting.
And it makes
local
everybody
business.
happy, doesn't it? Pasta just makes
Pasta and bread.
yes,
Come
it
on.
solves everybody
And
here at
meatballs.
PHNX. Yes,
Yeah.
It just solves your
The
problems.
meatballs, yeah, the meatballs.
Everybody-
Meatballs are really
Who
good.
doesn't want a little spaghetti
So
meatballs?
they're currently serving
bread.
Tempe and Queen Creek and hope to come to your neighborhood soon. So be sure to check out Spaghetti Shack. All right. There's some coach drama, one of which broke this morning.
Yeah.
Darryl Sutter fired in Calgary.
Darryl Bitterbeer Face Sutter.
The situation, and it's funny that we just spent a lot of time talking about the Florida Panthers because like these two teams are very tied together. Again, we can't say who won the trade because it hasn't been long enough. But this year, I think Florida won the trade in terms of this year. Doesn't mean that in the long term, Calgary won't thrive from this because now there's a complete change in the coaching staff and the front office. We already talked about Tree Living gone. So what are you guys' initial reactions?
I mean, first, on the note of the trade, I don't think there was any way for Calgary to win the trade. You had two players telling you they're not going to be there anymore.
They did their best.
Yeah, so Brad made something out of a really brutal situation. And part of that brutal situation is the reality of the market in Calgary. Guys don't want to play there. Sorry, it's true.
But they're getting a new building.
So that could change something. Still, when you're picking places to live, you don't want to go to Calgary. Sorry, it's the truth. If you look at player polls, you'll find that out. But in this particular instance, I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this now and saying, well, what if Darryl Sutter had been fired earlier? Would Brad have stayed? I don't think so. I think it was time for Brad to move on. I think he wants a fresh start. I think he'll have offers if he gets them. One of those might be in Pittsburgh. We'll see how all that plays out. But Don Maloney's news conference, and this will come as no surprise to anyone who followed the Don Maloney years. He's terrific in front of a camera. Always was a great quote. Man, he was frank and he was on point today. And I think we have some of those clips,
We
right?
do.
I debriefed Darryl for 2.5 hours, and it was in my mind very thorough, trying to understand, his what he did, how he viewed things. Hey, listen, Darryl is a very sharp man. He's got a good hockey mind. I found that I think in today's world. He's a firm coach, a hard coach, a demanding coach. That there's a shelf life to that type of coaching, and unfortunately for us, I think that his time obviously I felt his time expired.
That's the truth. That's the truth. What he just said there. There's a shelf life for a coach like Darryl Sutter. You might bring him in as a guy where you want to reestablish a hardworking culture for a couple of years.
He did that last year.
You probably have to do it with a veteran group of guys, but he's going to wear thin. And all the reports we heard out of Calgary were that he had worn thin on the players. Don was asked a question today, a follow-up question to this. Did some of the players tell you they would not come back if Darryl Sutter was the coach? He deflected that answer. To me, that was a yes, but I'm not going to say it into the camera. There were players who did not want to play for Darryl Sutter, and that jives with everything that I've heard about what was going on up there. I don't know that it even made sense to bring Darryl Sutter in the first place. Yeah, he got a little bit of a turnaround last year, but it sure was short in span, and they missed the playoffs this year. Obviously, they lost their two best players, so that had an impact on it, but I just don't think he's the kind of guy who can coach in the NHL anymore.
I don't know Darryl personally. I've heard stories that he's the reason they were able to pull through in LA. He was a big part of
Different
what
era.
made that happen. That was 2012.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. And the player has changed over the last decade. And the type of player and how you teach a player and how you motivate a player is different. And if you look at the coaches who are successful, and I mean win, they're not that. And when Darryl was doing that, if you go back to 2000, they're all like that. You don't think Jim Schoenfeld wasn't the nicest guy in the locker room either. He challenged players to fights, like physical fights in the locker room. Like it was a different era. You were in charge. You put down the hammer. The players said yes. And if they didn't say yes, they didn't play. Well, now if you push a player that hard, they call their agent. They call their mom and dad. And then they call the general manager. And if you don't think that there are parents calling GMs, you're wrong. They are. And agents are calling too.
That is
and
absolutely true.
Players have a voice and they don't want to be pushed around anymore. They're the asset. They know it. and they want to be able to speak and be heard. The problem is when the player gets heard too much and when they think they're bigger than the team or bigger than the organization. And I think that's what a player or a coach like Darryl was able to do in Calgary, is rein everything in, set a culture. And I think he accomplished that last year. We saw that. But it doesn't last forever. And I will go this far to say, I don't know if you'll ever see another coach in this league like that again. I don't know if you'll see that hard driving. You can be tough. You can be firm. You can have it your way. But you also got to be able to pat a guy on the back and lift him up. And if you can't do that and you become more about you than it is about the team or the organization or the player, I don't think you can survive.
Yeah, and I will say this about Darryl, who, you know, we know his reputation from covering the Kings. He was very curt in interviews while he was coaching the team. But every conversation that I've had with him for a story, he's been fantastic. He's given me great information.
Staff really liked him.
I don't think it was ever about Darryl. I just think that this was the approach that he learned from his time
in
as
Western
a kid
Canada.
Coming up, and what he learned from the players that he played with. It was a different era.
Yes.
This is what he learned, and that's what he knows.
Yes.
He did not evolve with the changing game. And and I don't know if I call that a flaw. Maybe he didn't want to evolve. Maybe he just, you know, he was at the tail end of his coaching, and this is what worked for him, and he wanted to stick with it. But if you want to stay in the game, you do need to evolve and understand that there's a new type of player and a different way of motivating them, and that ain't it anymore.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I mean, he won the Jack Adams last year.
Yeah.
He's won Stanley Cups. Like, he's had a successful coaching career. I agree with you guys that it's everything's evolved. And Nicholas in the chat said, Bear seems to have the perfect mix of that old school toughness, but the new school way of treating players as humans. And I think that was something that when Shane Doan was on last week, he really complimented him on that. Not only does he know today's player, he knows each player individually, because some players need a little bit of tough love, some need a little bit more support. I think that's like what a great leader does, is know the individuals. And anyway, and not to, I mean, just to mention Coach Tourigny, because he does seem to have that reputation, and this is a Coyotes podcast, but I mean, I'm not in the room. I'm not in the room, but from the things that I've heard, it seems like he perfectly fits the bill of how the NHL is trending.
I think, Leo, you brought up a good point, because here's what I'll say, and I don't want to make sure this point gets made about coaching. I don't think that means you let the inmates run the asylum. And I don't want that point that the players run the show. I think the only way you can be successful if you hold players accountable, there is no gray. It's black and white. We're going to do things the right way. We're doing it this way. This is how we're going to do it. But I'll listen to you. If you want to come in and talk to me about, hey, and here's what I'm talking about. We just played 3 and 4, and there's a practice day the next day, and we're flying home, and the captains and leaders come into the coach and go, you know what? We're really tired. We worked really hard. We really need a day off, coach. And that coach can go, you know what? Give and take. I'll give you guys a day off. I agree with you, but you better become ready to work the next day. Now, that's a coach that listens. You can still set a hard line, but you listen and communicate. You don't go, F you guys, we're skating and we're going to work really hard and I'm going to piss you all off and make everybody angry. That's the difference. And I think you can still have players accountable. I think you can still have rules. I think you still have systems, but you'll also listen and you care and you bring and include the players into that discussion. You're still the law, but you're willing to be a human being as well. And it's a fine line for some of these coaches. And I don't know if Darryl was able to walk that with this Calgary group when you see that over and over again with Bear.
Yeah. Just a further point in this, Don Maloney, of course, is the president of hockey operations and the interim GM. He made it very clear that he's going to hire a GM, and that GM will hire the coach. So that's how the process is going to play out. Yes,
if you don't have that synergy to start, you're screwed.
Yep.
You hire the coach now and then the GM, that's going to be a mess. So you need that synergy. By the way, he's got great hair still, doesn't he? Don, hasn't he? God, he looks good. So we'll see what they do there with the coaches. And I'm going through these coaches. And one of the things now that with Darryl, the days of the coaches needing to be a former NHL player and a high-level NHL player is starting to fade.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessary at the top of the resume anymore, that you've got to be a guy that's played or won. I don't know. There's so many guys that are excelling right now in this league that didn't play at that high of a level. Played and understand the game, but maybe didn't have to be an NHL player.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I don't have any problem with that.
Of course not.
Ex-player mentality that has pervaded this league for so long in management too, I think is stupid.
Yeah.
Prove to me that you can do the job. Just because you played the game at the NHL level doesn't mean that you can coach or be a GM. No, those are not the credentials that I'm looking for.
Yep. All right, one more coaching drama. Last week we talked about, we played Rick Bowness's comments after Winnipeg was eliminated, and now we're starting to see a little bit of the fallout.
Pushback, you might call it.
Yes. So Blake Wheeler went on the record and said this about Bowness. He said, quote, "He could have been honest with us. We could have had those discussions behind closed doors. So I didn't agree with how he handled himself after that game."
I got a question for you because you know how Bones operates in the room. Is Blake Wheeler really telling us that Rick Bowness wasn't honest with the guys before, that they didn't have these conversations from February on when he saw all these issues creeping in? Do you believe that?
It's really surprising that I'm not calling either one of these guys out because I don't know. I've worked with Rick Bowness. I would be extremely surprised if this was not addressed in the room at some point.
He's a communicative guy.
Extremely surprised.
Yeah.
Like, you saw what he said in front of the microphone, in front of reporters. If he's willing to say that there, I have a hard time believing that these guys didn't know where they stood in the room. I mean, Blake Wheeler lost his captaincy before the season started. You don't think that there was a discussion at that point? And on day one? Why? Rick Bowness has nothing to gain by playing a game here. Rick Bowness has literally done it all, seen it all, been there, done that. I don't think that he would go through this without telling the players.
No.
And he's a guy, he's tough too, but he also is one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with in hockey. I am extremely surprised by that comment.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised that the team didn't respond. Maybe he did say that after game 2, and this is the response. I'm not surprised.
And I'm not surprised that they're upset. I get why they'd be upset.
Absolutely,
I think
got called out.
I think they have the right to feel
But to think that wasn't addressed, I would be extremely surprised.
That's the thing that I'm getting at here with Wheeler. I'm sorry.
So now what?
Well, I think you got to blow it up.
A lot of interesting.
You got to blow it up. But Bowness is coming back, so it sounds like they're going to run it back for another year, and I just don't. I don't see this working. I don't see it working. Yeah, it is a mess, and I think you're kidding yourself if you think that this is going to work next season. They got all kinds of issues in Winnipeg. I want to come back to Wheeler for a minute, and I don't want to overplay this because it's not like I've covered the team or I've dealt with him all the time. We've talked a lot about how the Coyotes lost out on Blake Wheeler. He didn't want to sign here, and there are probably legitimate reasons for that, but I've never had good interactions with this guy. Like, I had an interview set up when I was in Winnipeg to do a story on him, and it was all set up. He walks into the locker room. We were going to talk after it. He looks at the media contingent. He goes, "You know what? Fuck you guys. I don't feel like talking to media today." This is the captain of the hockey team, and he turns around and walks out, and we're all like, "Okay, that's the leader of your franchise taking that approach." That was a stunner to me. I don't want to make too big a deal of this, but I have serious questions about Blake Wheeler. And the fact that his captaincy was stripped at the start of the season only strengthens those suspicions.
Yeah, I don't know him personally. So I knew I was here when drafted. I was here when they attempted to sign him. And when that all fell apart, I don't know him personally. All I can say is I think he's a good hockey player. I think coming down the right side with his size, his strength, his ability to get to that, his shot, kid can play. I don't know if he can put the rest of it together. You look at the Boston Bruins where he ended up playing, they deal him and get him out of their room before they go on a cup run. Coincidence? I don't know. And now he's kind of stuck in Winnipeg. Who's taking a chance there? But they got to get him out. Too. You have to get him out of that room. Period. End of story. And you've heard Cheveldayoff, the general manager, talking yesterday. That's kind of like, oh, we're just going to keep moving forward. Well, good luck. Good luck in that training camp. That's going to be a fun place to be. Right? Like, I don't know how you go into day one in a meeting with Rick Bowness and Blake Wheeler in the preseason meeting day one. I don't know how you do it. Something has got to give. Something has got to move there. And if you have to move the piece, there are teams that would be willing to take Blake Wheeler on.
He's got 1 year. So you could absorb that for one season. And if you have a veteran group, you might be able to absorb.
You have to have a veteran leadership group kind of absorb a player like that. And again, it goes back to, is that what you want to be when you're done with your hockey career? We're talking about Patrice Bergeron. Nice guy. What a great
just
leader.
Mentioned Bergeron and Crosby.
He's a winner. He's all of those good things. Or you're an asshole. Like, what do you want to be when you leave this game? What's more important? Doing it your way or doing it the right way? Like, I always said, like, yes, everybody wants to win. But when it's all said and done, everybody retires from this game. Everybody walks away from it. Everybody leaves. Do you want people to go, God, he was a nice guy. I loved playing with him. He was a great teammate. He was great in the room. Because guess what? The wins and losses are going to fade. The goals you score, they're all going to fade. You're going to remember the person.
Yep.
Why do you got to be an asshole? I don't understand it. For what end? So he can sit at his fishing cabin in Minnesota by himself?
That in Ilya Bryzgalov's voice, by the way. Why you have to be an asshole?
So he can sit there by himself and go, oh, I played in this league great? I don't know. I don't know the kid,
Yeah.
so maybe he can figure it out, but he's getting pretty damn old to figure it out.
Maybe you can come back with a lot of those pieces. There's some good pieces. Obviously, Nick Ehlers was not healthy. Josh Morrissey
This
had a
team
hell
was
of a
better
season.
3 years ago.
But you might want to find a way to deal Blake Wheeler. Get him out. He's got 1 year left, so teams might take him on, and you can't run it back with this same group. You can't.
Okay.
Let's send...
Not to mention the attendance issues.
Let's send Shovel Day off a case of Four Peaks so he can maybe take a week away and think about what he wants to do.
Maybe make a drunken call to Blake Wheeler when he tells him.
Yeah, I love it. Drink responsibly, of course. Four Peaks. Wow, what a companion to all the playoff hockey this weekend. Wow. And make sure you drink some tonight when you watch Game 7 between the Devils and the Rangers and the Phoenix Suns Game 2. It's a great... Drinking beer while watching sports is just an elite experience, and it's even better with Four Peaks. So make sure you go check out Four Peaks wherever you buy your beer. They have it at Target. They have it at Fry's. They have it everywhere. So check it out. Or you can check out the Four Peaks 8th Street Pub as well. As always, though, you must be 21 or older to enjoy responsibly. And if you're wondering, where can I watch all these games you just mentioned? Well, Fubo TV is the correct answer because Fubo has 140 plus live channels of sports, shows, movies, and news. You can stream live TV from any device. There's 1,000 hours of cloud DVR and no extra charge. So you can watch the NHL playoffs, you can watch the NBA playoffs, or whatever it is you like, all on Fubo TV. So make sure you check out the Suns, the Devils, the Rangers on ESPN with Fubo TV. Use the link in the description to sign up for 15% off your first month of Fubo Pro. All right, you guys, anything else before we wrap up?
More hockey.
Prediction for tonight?
They're playing in Newark.
At the Rock.
The Wizards was electric in Game 5. I like the Rangers.
You're going to take another road team I'm going with the Devils. Sticking with my pick.
I got to stick with my pick and say Rangers. However, my gut is saying Devils because there's just been a lot of crazy.
They didn't have an answer last game. Rangers were able, we talked about the system play. The Devils continued to play the same way. The Rangers found a different way to get through the neutral zone. They were able to use their speed for the first time to get into the offensive zone. And you know what the biggest thing is? The biggest change, the momentum changer in Game 6, taking Patrick Kane off the first power play. Which I think they gave. He didn't fit when he went there. They put him on the first power play right away, and they put Zibanejad, who's on the top left circle, and they moved him to the other side, and guess what? Couldn't score. Took Kane off the power play, put Zibanejad back where he goes, and they score. Coincidence? Hell no. I said it from the day they got him. I don't think Kane fits here. Sorry.
On Tuesday,
he's third line player right now.
You know what Petey's going to say into the camera on Tuesday when the Devils win? Sorry, Lindy.
Sorry, Lindy. But Kane's a third-line player in New York right now, and that's why I think they're going to win. They finally found out where he belongs.
All right. Well, we will find out tomorrow, and tomorrow we will preview the entire second round and give our predictions, which whatever we predict, just
we'll be
bet
wrong.
The opposite.
Bet the opposite.
Seriously.
It's going
I'm 3 for 4 in the East if Rangers win.
I'm 3 for 4 in the West. I could be 0 for 4 in the East. We'll see. Tough look for me. But anywho, we hope you tune in tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss when we go live. And you can follow us on Twitter at SPetersHockey, at Liam Merrill, at Craig S. Morgan, at Sean_DePaz. Follow the show at PHNX_Coyotes. We'll be back live tomorrow and 11 a.m. the rest of the week. So we hope to see you guys every day at 11 a.m. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday, everyone.
Go Rangers 2 for 5 on the power play. They win 4-2.